Good morning, everyone. This is Kelly Rainwater from the Institute of Applied Organizational Design and Transformation. Today, we're going to talk about a very pertinent topic that seems to come up often in the organizations that I consult in, which is the role of the HR business partner in having discussions with their leaders about organizational design needs, helping them identify organizational design needs, and then helping them know what action to take after they have identified that need to either do the design work themselves if they have the skills, or to find someone in the organization or outside the organization that can actually deliver the organizational design consulting that's needed. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the role of the HRBP in most companies these days. As you know, many companies have started to make the shift from the HR generalist being less of a transactional consultant and support to their leaders and more of a true strategic business partner and advisor. And leaders are expecting this as well of their HRBPs. Often the HRBP will consult and partner with centers of excellence in either change management, strategic planning, organizational development. That includes organizational design, could be strategic workforce planning, process improvement, and many others. And as this HR business partner comes along the maturity curve in being more strategic, it's really important, at least for organizational design, for them to have the following skills developed so that they can, at the minimum, start to identify organizational design needs when having a conversation with a leader. The first thing that I recommend is, hopefully, if the HRBP is in a trusted advisor and strong relationship position with their leader, they are in the human capital planning process that happens usually on a quarterly or at the minimum yearly basis. It's at that time when the HRBP can start to listen for the types of signals and words and needs and types of projects and concerns and pain points of the organization from the leader. Listening is a key skill. So the HRBP must be willing to open up a conversation and then listen and jot down their notes of what is really keeping the leader up at night. What is the hope for the organization in the next year to two? So there must be a time horizon they're looking in. And how can they possibly provide some solutions to the needs of that leader? Second is the HRBP must be able to ask strategic questions, especially around human capital needs. I'm going to focus on organizational design and transformation here. They must know the questions to ask to determine whether organizational design and/or transformation is actually necessary. In the deck that you will see here, I have actually included the Galbraith STAR model with a set of questions that an HRBP can ask a leader in certain areas based on what the conversation topic is to determine whether there could be a need. But the HRBP must be grounded in the fundamentals of organizational design, or they will not be able to have these conversations. The other key thing that the skill set the HRBP must have is understanding business value that the leader is trying to get from what they're asking for or talking about. Very often HRBPs are seen in very tactical positions, and they will be talking about job requisitions and talent acquisition and helping with performance issues with employees. they actually need to help shift the conversation to business value and strategy. So even if the leader is talking at a more tactical operational level, the HRBP must be able to up-level the conversation and inquire more around if there is an issue with talent, if there is an issue with acquisition, what exactly are they trying to solve for the organization at a greater level? And this could be at an enterprise or a functional level or even a sub-function level. So what is it they're trying to solve? Usually there are strategic objectives, initiatives, or hopefully a strategy at a functional or a enterprise level. And the HRBP, if they have that information or can pull that out of the leader, can help start to map the pain that they're discussing or the opportunity to what the value is and how it will further the strategy. It's very important to know what good looks like. So it's very important to ask the leader, based on what they're discussing, what would success look like? How would they know if they achieved whatever they're asking the HRBP to actually support them with? The next part is knowing the basics of organizational design. So it is critical that HRBPs these days actually understand the theory, the kind of the main approaches to organizational design, the terminology, and the basics of having an assessment conversation around the organizational design and transformation arena with the executives. I have several slides here that cover that, that you can read on your own. I cover what is organizational design, which helps a leader or a HRBP be able to have this conversation with a leader. And that is what you're seeing here. It also talks about the types of solutions and phases that you can approach an organizational design and transformation project using, and about how long many of those take depending on the size. And these are just estimates. It talks about the fact that organizational design is actually a process. It is not a toolkit. It is actually a process, and this is something on almost every organizational design I've been on that I see happen, even with experienced organizational designers and transformers, is they will set up a step process, but it's centered around the tools they will use, not the process that the leaders and the employees will go through to design the organization using those tools. So that is key, is for HRBPs to get across to the executives that if they want to do organizational design, it will require a process for them to go through. That means there will be sets of meetings that will be involving themselves, that could be involving peers, it could be involving direct reports, it could be involving SMEs, it could be involving employees who are actually the ones who get the work done every day. It actually could involve customers and outside regulatory bodies. So it is a process, first and foremost. If you have the tools and there's no process, you will not have a successful org design. Tools are great, but that's usually in the realm of the designer, not the HRBP. So most organizational design work will be done by an expert designer, but the HRBP plays the role of human capital consultant, assessor, and hopefully resourcer of that designer. It's also important for HRBPs to know what the goal of organizational design is. It actually can have multiple goals. So we'll talk a little bit in a second about what the common buzzwords or trigger words or language you will hear from an executive that will signal an organizational design. But first of all, it's incredibly important for an HRBP to know what the goal of an organizational design is. And in this day and time, there's really two types of goals, and it can actually be a combination of both. Really, organizational design is about the realization of strategy. So if an organization doesn't have a strategy that an HRBP is consulting to, that is the first step. They must get a strategy. They must get something down on paper that looks forward and documents where the organization is going to go and how they're going to get there. The aspect of organizational design and what it does is it helps design the maturing or core capabilities that are going to be necessary to execute the strategy. It also will help, if the organization has this pain point, it will help close variances in the customer experience that customers are having with the organization and ultimately its purpose and goals. So in terms of customer centricity and capability design, this is something very important for an organizational designer to be aware of. There's two types of focus in organizational design. One is designing to capabilities, to business capabilities. And that's the traditional way that design has been done for at least 20 to 30 years. Basically, the HRBP will be speaking with the business leader, understanding the strategy and understanding the pain points, and starting to understand and identify what capabilities are we needing to mature. Do we need to mature how we perform engineering? Do we need to mature how we perform talent acquisition? Do we need to mature how we perform product development? Depending on the function or the enterprise, it could be a number of different capabilities, and usually there are a set that need to be matured over time. So the language of business capabilities is critical for an HRBP to understand. And usually, again, that's what most organizational design processes are aimed at helping further and helping develop. The new type of organizational design that is coming on the forefront is called customer-centric org design. It is different slightly in how it's approached, and that's something really org designers need to know. But in terms of what an HRBP needs to know is if they hear their client talking about issues with either internal customers, say it's a service function such as HR or finance, that they're hearing that employees and leaders are not happy with what the function is delivering, then we're starting to get into possible customer-centric org design. And what you will hear are things around either external or internal customers not being happy with the experience they're having with the function or the organization, that you're seeing issues with loyalty, you're seeing issues with revenue enablement. That's huge. And really, all of the design work will then focus around closing variances in the customer experience by looking at what aspects of the organizational design, and I'm talking about all the aspects in the Galbraith Star model, which ones we're really going to have to focus on improving to improve the customer experience. Now, some transformations can involve both of these. So those are pretty complex, but if you hear a leader speaking about both, they may be saying, you know what, we have a labor cost reduction target of 25% over the next 6 months, and we're having a lot of issues and we're losing money. and our customer is not happy with the experience they're having from our organization in delivering service. Then you're looking at a organizational design that will have both of these types of focus. So the HRBP needs to be skilled in listening for both of these types of needs. One of the things that's important for the HRBP to set an expectation up front with the executive, if they start to talk about customer pain points or capability issues, and the conversation goes towards organizational design as a solution, is that there is going to be a need for what is called process top-down and bottoms-up design, which means that, yes, a group of executives will go through the process of designing, but they will need to get what we call deep dive input from SMEs and frontline employees, and sometimes customers and regulatory bodies in the design process to ensure that the design is actually going to produce the results needed from all stakeholders and in the strategy. So this is key. It is also key for the HRBP to set the expectation with the executive, and this is probably the most important thing I'll say in this, is that organizational design is not just a focus on structure, lines and boxes, and roles, and new role descriptions and placing people in those roles. It is what it says it is a design process. That means that it is not a group of people in a room within a few hours who draw some boxes on a wall and put some names in it without doing any assessment, without having any other people involved, and without looking at other components of the Galbraith Star model. So speaking of Galbraith Star model, it is very important that the HRBP understand what that Galbraith Star model is, and that is what you see here on this slide. This is the Galbraith Star model. It has been adapted. He originally did not include the customer as a part of the Galbraith Star, and also did not have technology or data. So I've expanded that at the Institute of Applied Organizational Design and Transformation, and this is the actual model. So it's very important that the HRBP understand this model and understand how this model fits together and how it's used to execute an organizational design. So going back, what are the signals that an HRBP might need to listen for from an executive if they're talking about customer-centric org design and pain points? So some of the things you're going to hear from the executive, and again, you will see these are very strategic statements. And that means that the HRBP must be having strategic conversations with these leaders. They cannot be simply having conversations around employee relations issues, whether someone needs to be terminated, and paperwork associated with hiring. So the types of things that they're going to be hearing a leader say is, how do we maximize customer value via operational excellence? So how do we become better at what we're doing to make sure that our customer is getting the best experience from us? We aren't changing fast enough to meet the needs of the new generation of customer. This is rampant right now, with companies having to adapt their organizational design, the operating model, to meet the needs of the customers. You'll also hear pain points like, how can we make sure our product offerings improve customer experience and drive more revenue? So there will be a focus on product and a conversation around product, but this is where that value up-leveling needs to occur, and kind of the querying is, okay, so we need to improve our products, but why? Why do we need to improve our products? Well, we want to improve our products because we want to deliver a better customer experience. And it doesn't always stop there. It's good to ask the executive, is that the ultimate goal of what you're hoping will come out of this? Or are you wanting to improve the customer experience because there is a need to drive revenue? Or there is a need to position the company in the market as the leader in customer experience. The other is that you will hear it doesn't feel possible to meet safety and quality standards and also focus on customer experience. So for highly regulated environments, such as the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, banking, utilities, there's often a compliance culture and then this tension between meeting customer experience, and again, this is either internal or external. By internal, I mean service functions and other functions trying to meet the needs of their own other functions within the company. How do we meet that balance between what the customer is wanting and also the regulations that we are held to? Whether that's safety, whether that's quality, whether that's risk, whether that's meeting certain quotas or numbers. Another you will hear is we're moving from a product-focused company to a customer-focused organization. What should we expect? So this, I have been asked so many times, and this is probably the most common kind of organizational design project I have done, is when a company wants to shift from being product-focused to customer-focused. And right now in the research, there is a very, very significant percentage of the Fortune 500 moving to customer-focused organizations. And this is something that's critical for an HRBP to understand, that we are no longer going to organize ourselves in product silos and just focus internally on improving our product. We have to tie it to what the customer is actually asking for and the pain points they're experiencing. And the leader will typically ask, how do you do this? How do you go from changing the organization to one complete design to a completely different other one? It isn't easy. It's one of the hardest transitions you can have. Okay, missing a slide. Okay. Let's talk about too, it's important for an HRBP to know that there are different types of organizational design projects. The types really look at the way they're segmented is, what is the degree of design that's really needed and how fast is it needed to be stood up? And what level of behavior change is really going to be required for adoption and engagement to happen, so for the design to be successful? The fastest type of design that has to be done, typically with the lowest level of behavior change, is restructuring. And what an HRBP is going to typically hear from a leader is that they've been given a cost reduction target for labor, cost takeout. And that, unfortunately, usually means layoffs, and HRBPs know that world very well, and they know their role very well. What they'll need to do is get a consultant that is adept in restructuring in that type of organizational design and partner with them to actually provide a solution to the leader and then to execute the restructuring for that leader. The next is called organizational alignment, and this is where typically you'll hear an executive talking about a team or a group within their organization that's not performing, or that there is a dissatisfaction with the way career paths have been formed. They've got something blocking talent and top talent is walking out the door. They don't have any career paths at all. And this is causing issues within the organization in terms of performance. That there are shadow organizations scattered throughout the enterprise that are doing the same thing that leaders group is doing. And they need to figure out how to either unify them or dissolve shadow organizations. They are talking about supporting new products and services or integrating new expertise. So for instance, you may hear a leader talk about that they're going to be consolidating with another group. And this is typically, these are smaller projects, not over 100 people, and really don't require massive behavioral change on anyone's part. It's mostly putting in structures that will support the organization in aligning where they're going towards their strategy. There's not a significant strategy change of any type. There's not a significant redirection of any type. It's not transforming. It is simply aligning the organization to execute on its current strategy in a more effective way. The HR business partner will typically pull in an organizational designer to put a solution or proposal together to help with this. The next ones over to the right, and I'm just going to give a high summary, are different types of much more complex redesigns. And you will see in organizational design, redesign, there are different types. So customer-centric org design, which we've talked about, digital design, which is very new and coming onto the horizon, and just as we've said, traditional capability-focused organizational design. And these are not things that HRBP should be taking on. These are something designers should be doing, but they certainly should be listening for anything that signals that these types of projects should be considered. Organizational transformation is usually a very misunderstood term. It's actually when all or most of the aspects of the Galbraith-Star model have some significant shift, that the strategy and vision of the organization is changing. And the organization has to make a step leap in maturity or a two-step leap in maturity over a period of anywhere from 1 to 5 years or more. It does not, organizational transformation does not always mean the business model. So the way the organization goes to market or gets revenue changes, but it can involve that. That is sometimes called business transformation. And so these are areas where if this type of conversation is coming up, you're hearing HRBPs are hearing the leader talk about an operating model shift or a culture shift, or typically a vision change or some large transformation that's been required. This is where they're going to need to pull on an experienced designer to help them facilitate the conversation around what the solution might be. Accelerated organizational design and transformation is its own world. This is basically designing, but designing in a very, very accelerated time period using a copyrighted approach that is it's called different things in different companies, but many companies actually specialize in doing this type of acceleration design. They're done in large events with lots of people, and they take work that can be done in years and actually get it done in months. They can take work that should be done in months and get it done in weeks. So again, all of the projects to the right typically involve very high levels of adoption and engagement, and typically take culture work and time for this to be done. It also involves a lot of leader and sponsorship and change championing to make them successful. Another thing an HRBP needs to know is and I've included 2 slides, is what is really the challenges of organizational design efforts. It is important, especially if you're dealing with a leader who knows organizational design and knows enough to be dangerous, and starts to jump to lines and boxes as the exercise they will go through to redesign their organization. It's very important to be sharing with them the types of challenges that they're going to face and how just focusing on lines and boxes is not going to get them there. Change management is going to be key. Project or program management is going to be key. Actually, being able to articulate at a day-to-day, role-to-role basis how an employee's job is going to change is absolutely critical, or else the organizational design will mean nothing to employees. It is also very important that the leader understand the impact in terms of distracting employees from what they do every day. So that's the number one risk of organizational design efforts, is that it takes away from what employees are doing every day on their jobs, because they're typically pulled into the redesign or they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. I've included in this deck common questions that leaders will ask HRBPs around organizational design. And I've also included a set of common terms. And these are terms that can be used in different ways, but depending on who you're talking to, but this is the terms that we use at the Institute. It's important to know that there's many different models of how organizational design is viewed. The Galbraith star, which you'll see here, which is starred, is the most comprehensive and widely used. That's why we use that here at the Institute, but we have adapted it to include more components as organizations have become more complex. You'll see different models here shown. And last, again, we have the Galbraith star. I've also included a assessment or set of diagnostic questions that an HRBP can use as you go around the star based on the conversation you're having with the leader. And that could be anything around, the leader could start around people practices and issues they're having. But it could lead you then to ask questions around the root causes of those people practice problems. Same thing with process issues. You could ask a certain set of questions, or the leader can be talking about process issues, and you could start to understand that there may be something else causing those around the Galbraith star, and you might want to ask some other questions just to make sure that it is not simply a process problem. Very often in conversations HRBPs have with executives or leaders, they will take the presenting solution or pain as the problem and not inquire deeper into the root cause of that problem. And they will go and propose a solution that solves and puts a Band-Aid on a symptom and does not actually solve the root of a problem. Last, I've included the organizational design process steps in a large org design. So this is not for the smaller ones that we discussed earlier for organizational alignment or restructuring. This is for full-scale organizational design. This requires a great deal of training, which we do at the Institute. This is typically also for organizational design and transformation professionals. But it does not hurt for the HRBP to have this background in how to actually go through the process and use the tools to execute organizational design and transformation. I've also included a skills inventory for organizational design, and this is really for designers, but the basic skills down at the bottom, it is not a bad thing for most HRBPs to have these skills and to have either the knowledge or have the practice in these areas. And very last, I've also included the types of team roles and responsibilities at a very minimum that are typically on an organizational design project. Why is this important? Usually because the leader, if they are starting to talk organizational design with the HRBP, will start to ask what are the resources and what are the types of people that I'm going to need to make sure I'm successful. And the HRBP needs to have an understanding of that, or they could end up setting up the project in a way that is obviously doesn't have the right resources to execute, which is a very dangerous thing for organizational design projects, and I have definitely seen it. I've seen many projects that have no project manager, which is key, and they have no one playing the role of change management support, and they also don't have anybody that knows how to do workforce planning, which is absolutely key to certain types of organizational design. So I hope you found this helpful today. If you have any more questions around how the HRBP can play a more substantial role in helping listen for, assess, and then help find solutions to organizational design needs, please give me a ring. My name is Kelly Rainwater. Again, I can be reached through the Institute of Applied Organizational Design and Transformation. And I also can be reached at my email, which is santafe2019@aol.com. That's santafe2019@aol.com. Hope you all have a great day and take care.